Hello and welcome to episode 101 of the WP Café show, the show where I get together with my co-host Mark Wilkinson and chat about running our WordPress business, talking about WordPress development and the business side of things. Thanks for joining us today. We are live on YouTube as always. If you're joining us live, very welcome along. Please do get your comments and questions in, and do just say hello. It's always nice to see who's joining us. We're also available on a podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast player or on wpcafe.show, where you can watch or listen to all the episodes on there. So thanks for coming along. Today we've got a few things on the topic list. We have documentation for our products. So Mark's been working on writing up some new docs, so just talking about our experiences and thoughts around that, and also about making changes to a block. So again, that's something that Mark's been doing this week that we'll chat about. But before we get started, how are you today, Mark?
I am very well. Hello, everybody. I am very well. I am looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah.
Should be nice. Although the weather's not going to be very nice, I don't think. We've got some rain coming in. Hopefully that's going to come in on Sunday, though, and we'll get at least a day of pleasant weather. But yeah, I've been busy all week doing some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, obviously. We have been working on our full site editing build for the school website that we mentioned. That's kind of progressing slowly.
Yeah.
I've got some new glasses, which look exactly the same as the other pair because they are the same frames, but the prescription's changed. How exciting. Yeah, just plodding along, really. Nothing too exciting. What about yourself?
Very good. Similar, getting new glasses. Mine haven't arrived yet. Yeah, I had an eye test on Monday morning, and it's slightly worse, but only a tiny bit. But I needed some new frames. Well, actually, do you know what? I thought about this afterwards. I didn't need new frames at all. I needed new lenses.
Yeah,
because they were all scratched up. So I should have just brought my frames in and said stick some new lenses in there. But no, they upsold me 2 pairs of brand new frames and lenses. So spent a bunch of money
for it
at Specsavers. Fell for the whole thing. But yeah, so that'll be coming soon.
They tried to flog me some of the sort of designer ones that you go for in there.
Yeah,
and I was like, I can't be bothered like looking for any of these. I mean, like glasses. Like, forgive me if I'm wrong, like, but they're just like pieces of plastic. Like, how can whatever designer brand be any better? It's the lenses that do the job. Like,
yes, it's the look though, right?
I don't get it. So I said, have you got any of these that I had last time? And they're like, oh yeah, these are 15 quid. They were. So I said, right, I'll have a pair of them. 15 quid, yeah. So I'll have a pair of them. And then she, are you sure you don't want to have a look at these designer ones? No, 15 quid, thanks very much. And then when you sit down with the, what are they called? The helpers, basically. They've got a name, but I can't remember. Like, not the opticians, but the people that help you.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, do you not want to get these thin, sir? Because they're going to be a bit thick around the edges. No, don't want to get them thin. That costs you like 150 quid, and then you sit on them and break them, and then that's the end of that. So I don't get them thin. So yeah, 15 quid, bargain.
That's incredible. Oh, I feel like I've totally been had now. I'm not going to tell you how much I spent. two pairs of designer frames with some kind of anti-reflective coating.
Suck it into it, you see. Yeah.
To be honest, this is so off topic, it's ridiculous, but I looked around the whole set. I didn't just look at the designer ones, and I just happened to like my favorite pair were one of those. Like the previous ones, the ones that I currently wear, which are those ones, or just like a Specsavers brand, I think. So anyway, I'm not really into the brands. In fact, I don't want it to say something down the side because I just don't really like being a branded person. There you go. Bit off topic.
It's just crazy. The whole thing. Anyway, let's say hello to some people. Hiya, Courtney from Bath. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Craig.
Not from the Bath. From Bath.
Maybe.
Yeah. Who knows?
In the Bath.
Having a bath.
I'd assume from Bath near Bristol. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's beautiful.
Craig, thank you for joining us. I'm not sure where Craig's from. I think he's in Scotland, is Craig, but I might be wrong.
Yeah.
X-Lams, thank you. Nicholas, Tony, Nick, Jackson, Ciao, moved from Italy. Don't know. Yeah. Specsavers always do that. Oh, I presume that's the
rip you off.
Rip you off.
Yeah.
Joe says he's the same as well. And Nick says he goes to Glasses Direct. Interesting. You must get your prescription done somewhere else, though, surely.
Well, yeah, I guess you get your prescription done in Specsavers or wherever, and then just
and then
order your frames and lenses online.
Interesting.
We're here every week, guys, for your, eye care needs.
Anyway, yeah. So that was our week. So first topic, Keith.
Documentation. Something you've been doing. So we have some documentation on our. This is specifically for JobRelay, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We already have some documentation on there. You've done a decent job. I mean, it's not an extensive plugin in terms of like loads of functionality and like there's lots and lots to do, but you wanted to update things and add some of the filters and hooks available. Is that it?
And basically this came about because we've had some documentation on there that's very much been a bit of a mishmash of throw some content on the website type thing. And what I mean by that is you get people that have asked you questions in support, and I'm trying my best to get into the habit of answering the question in a document and then sending them the link to the document rather than by trying to answer the question in the email, because it just makes it more reusable and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So because everything was a bit of a mess on the site, there's no sort of structure to it. I started off trying to create some structure, and I thought the first thing I'd like to do is to actually document all of the plugins hooks, so all of the actions and filters that developers are able to use to make customizations and changes. So that was my first task. That's how it started, if that makes sense, was to get hold of these actions and filters and write a page on each one, not massively just a page, just literally like, what is it? What does it do? What parameters it takes, and what sort of things you can do with it. So I went about doing that. There isn't actually that many. When you think about it, I think there's about 20 filters and about 11 hooks, I think, or actions that are available to use.
Yeah.
So when I first started, it seemed it felt like a daunting task, but actually there wasn't that many. So I started off creating pages in WordPress. I created like a hooks page at the top level and did sub pages for each of the ones. And then I used a block editor. I even created a pattern, which is exciting. So I went and had a look at how WordPress.org does it. Their sort of what used to be the codex pages, but now is the developer pages. And just thought that's quite a nice setup. So the way they do it is they have the hook name at the top, whether it's an action or a filter. So they do like, do action, save post, and then they put the parameters that take or is passed, along with the sort of like the data type for each parameter, whether it's an array or an integer or a string or whatever it is. And then I had a little brief description about what the hook was, where does it fire, when does it happen, etc. And then I had the parameters that it accepts underneath, listed them out, what they are, what you can use them for. And then I had a section for more details. So if I wanted to go into a bit more detail about what it did, rather than just a simple sentence, give it some context, for example, I could do that. And then finally underneath, I had a little section for example usage. So like some example code, of examples of using that hook. And we can keep adding to them. The more support requests come in and say, oh, I want to do this, I could then write another example on the hook and stick it on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
They use the details block, which is nice. So they collapse. So you can put what the code is, the example is, and then you can click and it expands, and then you can have comments and the code sample. So it's quite nice. And I also used a table of contents at the top. There's a plugin for table of contents block, which just takes all the headings in your post and puts them in a table of contents. And I did that, and I did like in this article, which was collapsed, click it expands, and it shows you the sort of the outline of the doc. And then I turned that into a non-synced pattern. So once I'd formatted it all and everything, so I can basically just drop it onto a page and then go and edit all of the different bits to change it all and for this particular hook. So that was my first task.
Could you have done that as a template, like a page template?
No, because
not on our theme. Yeah,
and not on our theme because it's not full site editing yet.
Yeah,
full site editing completely.
Yeah.
If it was a template, it would have to have
Just thinking
it's just a content block, I think.
Yeah, I mean, doing that as a pattern is better than not doing it as a pattern, but obviously taking that in the next level where you could make global changes to that template that you've created.
Yeah, that's my only problem now, is if I now want to change the way that looks, I've got to go change every page.
Yes.
But hey ho, that's fine.
Yeah. There's not too
so that was a non-sync pattern, yeah. And then I also, as I was doing it, I did like, I've got my little table of contents details block. I've got that as a pattern, so I can use it on other things as well, like in this article. So it's now saved in there. So I actually quite enjoyed it. I just quite enjoyed doing it that way and sort of designing it all up and then creating the pattern and then being able to just drop it on the page. It's quite nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, the only downside to it is the updating thing. But
I do find working in the block editor quite fun sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't always find developing for it fun and working out how I'm going to do things. But once we've built sites and have it, like, I quite like it.
There's a real nice. It's not really just to do the block editor. There's a real nice, like, feeling like you're working on something like that, and you because you put your head in and then you have a look at it and then you tweak it and then you tweak it and then I'm constantly thinking, because I thought at the start, this would work as a pattern really well because I can just drop this on. I don't need to make all these changes every time. And then I was constantly thinking, well, I don't want to create a pattern though until I've got it right.
Yeah.
So I was constantly tweaking, and I was never quite at that point where I thought, right, I like it now. So I finally got there, and then that was good. So it's nice just to tweak.
So, Mark, I would say that you are someone who criticizes other people's documentation a lot. So what have you done? Like, what kind of things do you think are important to make good documentation? Like, what have you brought in that you think, I'm definitely going to do that because it really annoys me when people don't?
So one thing that I think is really important in documentation is to have examples of code.
Yeah.
I haven't got them yet, but I want to get an example for each one. That's the plan.
Yeah.
And when you're putting examples of code in, I think it's super important to comment the code.
Yes.
So you can understand what is happening. Now, you may be in the camp of you don't comment the code, and that's fine. But I think on an example, if you're writing an example piece of code that's in a guide, here's how to do this, it's so important that that's commented. Yeah. And yes, I mean almost every line. What is happening? What is this thing doing? I think that's so important in documentation.
Yeah. Because there's always the argument, it's like, well, the code explains it. You just read the code, but then
that's not
WordPress
true.
is full of people like us who are self-taught and maybe don't understand that syntax, so they don't actually know what that line of code is doing at all. So that little comment is just, there's no harm in it, but it can be massively beneficial.
Yeah.
Strip it out if you want.
I look at code for the block editor and what is it? Is it React? I don't know what it is anyway.
Yeah,
and I don't understand it. I don't get it. So just put a comment that tells me what it's doing. And then
help us learn.
Help us learn. Literally, that's what this article is. Literally to help us learn. So why not help us learn more by putting a comment on? So I think that's really important. Yeah. And I'll be trying to do that going forward. So yeah, we've got those fully documented for those things. I then decided that pages weren't the right way to go because it was very difficult to make a search that only searched your documentation, i.e., only search children of my documentation page.
Right.
I managed to get this.
Why was that so hard?
Well, I managed to get the search block to do that because you can pass. Well, actually, you can't. You can. You can pass parameters to the search block. So you could add a parameter that says post parent equals, but WordPress won't actually do anything with that for various reasons I won't go into now. So I managed to get it to pass a parameter like that, and then I had code that detected that parameter and then changed the search using the pre-get posts, basically saying, hey, if this thing's here, let's just search inside of this post. The problem with that is it would only search direct children of my post, my documentation. It wouldn't search nested items within that.
So there's no get ancestors of kind of...
Again, there would be solutions, but they would be difficult and probably quite costly in terms of query.
Were you able to scope that to just the document, so you could use the search block normally elsewhere, but that particular extra query was scoped just to the documentation.
That's right. So we just create a variation of the search block, which predefines these parameters in the search itself. So anyway, having decided that was a silly way to do it, the better way to do it, by the way, if you're going to use pages, would be to categorize everything in a category called documentation, and then the search just searched anything in that category. But I then went to custom post type, obviously. So I did a custom post type, and then again, I was easily able to create a variation of the search block that was specific to a post type. So when you type in this search box, it only searches the documentation post type.
Yeah,
so that was better. That was good. So that went well, and then I started taking my existing sort of pages that I'd already written in a mishmash that people had sent over and I'd written, and tried to organize them into some sort of structure within my document post type. So I made my post type hierarchical. I'm just trying to get my documentation page up so I can tell you what it's all about. Bear with me a second. I made it hierarchical, and I've kind of now got, when you land on the docs page, which is jobrelay.io/docs, you get help as a section, and then you get all the sort of help articles. Now, deciding what was a help article and what was a guide, guides is one of my other headings, was sometimes a little bit difficult, but I did my best. I've then got, so the four categories, if you like, on the documentation, I've got help, troubleshooting, guides, and developer docs.
Oh, so yeah. How do you split stuff between help, troubleshooting, and guides?
Well, yeah, it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
A guide is more how to do this thing.
Yeah.
Which you might be getting help on. I get that.
No, that's fine. So, and then help is what?
Help is more, I need help on this thing that already exists. Understanding how it works, or
okay,
that sort of
and then
thing.
Troubleshooting, something's gone wrong, help me fix it.
Troubleshooting is basically something's broken. What is it? Help me fix it type thing, yeah.
Tricky.
So in the help section, I've got like installation, settings, talking through what the settings are, managing your account, which is, I mean, that's help. Mapping fields, updating fields, that sort of thing. And then troubleshooting, I've got general, like posting's not working, debugging things, that sort of thing. And then guides, I've just got like the how to do specific things that people have asked us, basically, that might not be the norm of JobRelay, but you can make it do these things. So there's a guide on how to do it. One example is how to use Gravity Forms for applicant tracking, how to create a form and make it work with the tracking that JobRelay provides. So that's one example. And then my developer docs at the moment is just literally, we have a page which is like a developer's guide to JobRelay, which just talks to developers in developer sort of speak. Not very technical, but like how JobRelay actually works, what does it do? And then I've got my hooks reference, which is basically just on the list of all the hooks and filters, and then they link out to the different pages to what they do. So I'm quite pleased with it. I'm quite happy that we've got that sort of structure. I'm sure it might build on that, and more things will appear in it. And then I've stuck a search at the top, so if you search, it'll obviously start to search just the docs. So yeah, that was my sort of a few. Cool. Well, I say a few days, probably about a day in total, just getting it all done. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
So one of the things we wanted to talk about today, or that you had on the list, was that simple block changes are too hard. Is that related to this search block thing?
It is. It is. So and I'm sure people have already gone to jobrelay.io/docs. If you have that on your screen down in front of you, you'll see that I have a help page in. You can't actually click on it to get to the help page, but /help. And what I want to do on that page is to say I want to show a hierarchical post list of the pages or the posts in my custom post type that are children of my help post. Just like you would with pages. Yeah. So you'd say, show me the children of this particular page, your post ID or whatever it is. Now, WordPress has a block called page list, but it only works with pages. And it produces a beautiful hierarchical view of all the pages, or you can limit it for a specific parent. So I've got exactly what I want, but I don't want it for pages. I want it for my post type. And I couldn't work out how to change that. There's no attributes to set the post type in the block, so I could do a variation again. And I just couldn't work out how to do it. I posted on X, on Twitter, and people were saying, surely you can do a variation. Surely you could look at the way that block works and replicate it. No, I can't. I don't understand how it works. So And we're back to that. I spent 25 minutes sort of looking around, how do I do this? Can I set this parameter? And I just thought, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to create a shortcode that uses WP list pages, and I can set a page post type. So that's what I did, and it works.
Like shortcodes are great.
It's just too hard. It's just the development's too hard. I mean, I thought the other thing I could do is create an ACF block. That'd be dead easy to do. Just give it a setting where you choose a post type, and then it does the same thing. I just thought, there's only me using it. Like, I know how a shortcode works. I'm just going to do that. It's easy. So that's what I did in the end. And it's just stuff like that that's still really difficult to do in the block world, I think. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just because I'm not in that world enough. But
it's almost definitely partly that. So you were spending all day every day in React and building custom blocks, then I'm sure you could have figured that out much quicker, but we're not. So I mean, that's fine.
I mean, like the variations that I created for the search block, that's still. I know I'm moaning on about it, and everything has a method to do it. I get that, but like you still have to hook in a JavaScript file. You then have to understand which dependencies you need for the JavaScript file. I'm trying to find my JavaScript file now. Bear with me a second. It was under. I'm in the wrong project. That's why I can't see it. So I think to require is it WP blocks as a library to require. And again, you need to know that. How do you know that? And then once you've done that, you can then just start writing JavaScript. Like you don't need to compile it at that point. And then it kind of worked. But it was really difficult to get your head around that. Now I know that, and I get this. Like I know. Everything's a learning curve, and once you know it, it's easier. But it is just difficult. It's not just like what I'm used to, where you load up a PHP file, you start writing in it, and then you refresh your browser, and it sort of works. It's much more straightforward, should we say? But it's much more powerful, I suppose, isn't it, with these tools we've got? So can't
exactly. You touched just briefly there on kind of classifying things. So the way that you've split up the documentation into like getting started, guides, help, troubleshooting, etc., kind of just triggered in my head something that we've been dealing with today about taxonomies in general. So on the school site that we're working on, we had a chat with them last week about blog and news taxonomies. And they didn't really have a really clear. They had some ideas what they might like and not really. So we kind of asked them, like, you guys know your content. You kind of need to go away and have a think about this. And they did, and they came back with a kind of really interesting kind of structure. It wasn't what I was expecting. And it was like level 1, bang, 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 bang. Level 2, level 3. And we couldn't quite work out. Level 2 and 3 were obviously like hierarchical.
It seemed to be.
We couldn't work out how level 1 related to level 2. That was kind of interesting. And also none of them had actual names. So it was like level 1, level 2, like so like in the WordPress backend, when you're adding a term, not adding a term, applying a term to like a bit of content, level 1 doesn't really tell you anything about what you're adding. So we were trying to like work it out. It's actually really hard. It was really hard for us. Like we had some opinions on it, but like we couldn't come up with a no-brainer structure, really, could we? Like we've got
firstly,
some ideas, but it's hard.
We stripped it back because we talked to the customer about categories and tags. And we stripped it back to the very basics, and it's like, what is the difference between a category and a tag? Now I know that the purist developers will say, well, one's hierarchical and what isn't hierarchical. Like, forget that. What is the difference? They're both categorizing or grouping content. So how do you explain what is the difference? Like, should I put a category for this or should I make it a tag?
Yeah.
And I find that very hard to actually explain to someone what is the difference.
Yeah. I think if there's like multiple ways that you want to split content out. So categories and tags kind of sit quite nicely for probably a lot of websites. You could explain the hierarchical nature. You could explain that you typically have around up to 10 categories and tags are kind of infinite. Content typically gets categorized under one thing and maybe multiple tags. So I understand all that, but then there comes like, well, there's custom taxonomies as well. So, and that's where I think maybe they didn't kind of realize that. So it was obvious that like one of their level 1, I think it was the school like kind of groups. So they've got like prep schools, pre-prep schools, sixth form, whatever, like almost like year groups and things. So like that's the way they're kind of categorizing that. So to me, unless that's the only way we're going to categorize content, in which case it could be categories, that is a custom taxonomy. Because it's a very clearly defined set of like those things are grouped together, like school years or whatever. It's kind of related to where a child is in the school kind of pathway. So that's okay. And then I guess we could use categories for everything else, and then tags for, I say everything else, categories for the next 10 most important things, like groups. And they can be kind of arbitrary. Like they don't have to be, those terms don't have to be like related, let's say. They could be they could almost be anything, but like most of our content is going to go into one of these 5 to 10 terms, and then everything else is just a tag. That's probably how I would do it if I were them.
I would agree. I think we spoke about this before, didn't we? That's kind of makes sense to me. Mark says here, where's it gone? There it goes. I've put this on before. Categories should be kept to a minimum so that they are the main groups. I completely agree with you. I think that's a great suggestion. But for example, and this is like when you're talking to customers. So let's say the customer comes back and says, "Oh, well, we post the football scores for the teams. We post those every week at the end of the week. So that's a main category. So I should have football scores as a category." I don't think you should, but that's what I'm saying. It's really hard to get clients to understand. I can't really explain why that shouldn't be a category, although I kind of know it probably shouldn't be a category.
I think maybe, but it almost maybe also depends on how important that is to the average site visitor. That's just like coming to the school to look for information that they need. Like, is that or is the football scores one of the most popular pages? Maybe it is, and actually it should be one of those top level categories. I don't know. Like, yeah. But the thing that was interesting for me is that usually this stuff feels fairly intuitive to me. Like most sites we work on, I think, it should be structured like X, like this, and you can present it. But this one actually had me literally scratching my head a little bit.
I do think it's always hard. It's always hard. You know, I went and I looked at the BBC News website, which I know is a bit of a very different kettle of fish. But they tend to do it whereby news is categorized. I think that's what I'd call it. It's categorized into location around the world, essentially. So this is a England piece of news. This is a world Asian piece of news. That they are what we'd call categories, as they're very few. You know, there's a few bandings of them. And then underneath that, if you look at the end of an article, it has what they call topics, which I would say are like tags. And you could have, you know, all sorts of topics. You know, you might have, you know, like Conservative Party or I'd have to have a look at them. And then you click on those and it gives you all of the news stories around that topic. But you can't get a whole list of topics. You can't say, show me all the topics on this website, because there's hundreds of them and that would be just too wieldy. So
interestingly, the BBC, that is an interesting example, because I've just loaded it up. So you've got obviously the top BBC bar, which is like news, sport, weather, blah, blah. So that's like the areas that they cover. So I'm in news, and then the next row of navigation is home, in depth, Israel Gaza war, US election, cost of living, war in Ukraine, climate, UK, world business. So that's like the next level. And then there's more. There's like a little kind of expand this, and then you get the things that I would consider are the main news topics, like categories, which are politics, tech, health, culture, science. So like
that's true, yeah.
It's interesting that those are the ones that are hidden. So they've chose what the BBC seem to have done is that top level. So in depth, if you look at the URL, it's the URL structure that kind of gives it away.
Yeah.
So in depth is just news / BBC in depth. So that's like kind of some kind of top level category. Whereas Israel Gaza war is a topic.
But it's a topic. It's not,
topic. So that's kind of like a tag or a topic or something kind of different.
So they're selecting topics
exactly
to place in that red menu bar to say, look, these are the topics that are important right now that we think you should have direct
exactly. And some of those are categories, and some of those seem to be kind of tags or topics. So
because I can click on UK, which is not a topic. It doesn't have topic in the URL.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're almost saying like, we're never going to show you. Here are all the categories, and here are all the topics, and maybe locations is actually a separate grouping for them, like the UK, England, Northern Ireland, world, etc. I just think it's really hard. This is really hard to group things sensibly together.
It's pretty fascinating. And like you said,
sorry, I was going to say, start here. Everything is a tag unless it can be grouped inside a more generic grouping. So theatre productions in events, football in sport. But what if your blog is only about football? Then you wouldn't have sport, surely, as a category. You'd have football as a category.
No, you wouldn't.
And then what would your tags be?
If your blog was about football, you wouldn't have football as a category.
That's what I'm saying. So then what would you... Or is that just obvious? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just really hard. I find it really hard.
It is. And it's hard to give advice on it as well. I find, that was the thing with that email. I got that email and I looked at it and thought, that isn't right, but I don't know what is. But I think we're getting there with it. Like,
and I think why I find it difficult is because, like, Mark's putting some really good suggestions in the comments here, and actually I agree with every one of them. So that tells me that I genuinely understand how they should be used, but I cannot communicate that to a customer very well with what are the rules. So that's why I think it's really difficult to get your head around, because I don't seem to have any rules in my head about how to communicate it, but I genuinely know what should and shouldn't be a category and it should be a tag, etc.
Yeah. Maybe there's something about like timeliness as well. So for example, Elon Musk shouldn't be a category on the BBC News website, because one day he's, hopefully sooner rather than later, he's going to be less significant in the news. Same as like, Keir Starmer or whatever. That makes sense to me to be a tag. So maybe there's like a kind of sense of like permanence of a thing as well. That's something I've never really thought about. But the tags make sense for stuff that's kind of transient, that can come and go. I don't know. It's hard. And then this all feeds into, once we decide that structure, how do we expose that structure to the site visitors?
Yeah.
Like how am I actually going to let them choose between all these things? And like, do we have landing pages or listings pages or whatever for all of these? And I
think I said to you when we were discussing it, like, I think that should come from thinking about what the users will want to see. So, will a user say, land on the site and say, I want to see all of the prep school posts? Yes, they might do, because my son or daughter is in prep school and I just want to know the news that's going on in that. So I think that makes sense. So you'd expose that somewhere as you can see all this, whether it's a filter that you click on or you click on a different page for an archive. But, is there a link where I don't know, there might be other things that you do want to categorize, but you're not necessarily expecting a user to come along to the site and say, I want to see all of this. I don't know. And maybe that's what you decide what you do expose and don't expose. In the first instance, maybe everything should be exposed somehow, but not necessarily as a top level. These are the main things that we want you to see.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Love to know everyone's thoughts on that, if they've got any that, particularly in projects that have had this sort of categorization. A lot of sites just have news and they might have 2 or 3 categories, and that just works, doesn't it? But when you have sites like this that have got specific things that want to group it by, it does get a little bit complicated.
Yeah. While people are getting their thoughts or answers together for you there, Mark, just the other little thing I just wanted to mention was, it was really cool because I was scrolling through Twitter the other evening, and I saw a post from Matt Medeiros, and it was something about like how to add YouTube videos to your WordPress site fast or something like that, with a little flame emoji. And I was like, Oh, that's interesting. That sounds interesting. Sounds like something that we've got a product for. So I clicked his link to YouTube, and it's him doing a review of your plugin or our plugin, mostly yours, but I did some of the front end stuff. But so we've got a plugin called Better Core Video Embeds, and Matt picked that up somehow. You think it might be something that you posted that he might have seen? I don't know.
I did a tweet about it. Was it last week?
Yeah.
I wonder if he just like found it in his feed.
Yeah,
thought, oh, that's interesting. I'll look
yeah.
at it.
So he'd done a little review, a little video review of it. That was really cool. So thank you, Matt, if you're watching along. Yeah. Do you want to just quickly plug that plugin, or just say what it does?
I will very quickly plug that plugin. So what it allows you to do is and it uses the core embed block, so you can just carry on doing what you normally do. But if you embed a YouTube Vimeo video into your post, what it will do by default is that when that loads on the front end, it will not actually load the iframe embed. It will load the thumbnail overlaid with a play button. And only when you click that will it actually then load in the iframe and everything and all the JavaScript and stuff that comes with it. So the idea being is it's a bit lighter on page load, and it only loads that stuff when you actually interact with the video. That's the idea. And recently, it's probably a few months ago now, I managed, God knows how, but I managed to get an image upload thing on the embed block, extending the block. So you can actually put a custom thumbnail on now as well, if you don't want the YouTube thumbnail, which obviously if you're doing your own YouTube videos, you have control over the thumbnail in YouTube. But if you're embedding someone else's YouTube video, maybe you want a different thumbnail that's a bit more appropriate. So it does that. And it's dead simple. There's no settings for the plugin apart from on the block itself where you can put your thumbnail in. You just install it, activate it, and if you don't like it anymore, just deactivate it, and all your videos will be back to how they were to start with. So better core and video embeds.
Very cool.
It's nice. It's good.
Yeah, very good. All right. I think we should wrap it up. Unless you've got anything else to say, Mark, or anybody in the comments, but it's your last chance. No, let's wrap it up for today. Thanks for joining us today, as always. If you did enjoy the show, if you continue to enjoy the show, please do consider leaving us a little like on the video on YouTube, or even subscribe there if you don't want to miss an episode. It'll come straight into your inbox if you subscribe and sign up for the notifications. I think it's that little bell icon thing gives you email notifications. So please consider doing that, and obviously subscribing on the podcast. You probably already are subscribed on the podcast if you're listening along, but if you're not, consider following or subscribing along there too. We do this nearly every Friday at the same kind of time. So hopefully we'll see you there next week.
Bye-bye.